Hello and welcome to Comprehension Points Video Snark. If you came here because you thought that this was an audiobook, please stick around and maybe learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. I read books and discuss what went wrong and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read through of Betrothed by Kiera Cass. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 5. The chapter opens on the history of the trees of the Northcott estate, and if I was actually at this place and touring it, I would probably find it interesting. But since this is a fictional place in the history and why they tore a tree out to put in a footpath that are nothing but throwaway lines is seen as maddening. Editor? Anybody seen an editor? Eaton follows him around and Hollis jokes that he's making sure that she doesn't attack the grounds with an axe or something. Getting real tired of Eaton's poor attitude here. They go to some flowers where Hollis encourages Aunt Giovanna to sit on a bench. She then braids Giovanna's hair and puts flowers in it before giving her a flower crown. She then does Scarlett's hair the same way. Eaton watches the entire thing, seemingly happy for the first time. Hollis puts a flower in the buttonhole on his jacket, and she's surprised that he neither removes it nor comments about it. That night, the maids refused to come to Hollis's room to build a fire, which shouldn't have been a problem, except that there was no firewood. Scarlett wasn't in her room, and she barely had any wood left for her own fire, which was lit, so Hollis couldn't take it. Since it was pretty cold that night, Hollis decided to forego her ego and ask Eaton for firewood. He gives her some but tells her where the firewood is outside so that she can get some for herself tomorrow. As she's leaving, she sees a sword hanging on the wall. It's the one he had used at the tourney in the first book, and Hollis talks about Silas for a moment. Eaton says that the sword is too badly damaged to use anymore, and it could break after one good blow. But he can't get rid of the sword because Silas was so proud to have made that one. She tells him that Silas had told her about his cousin, and Scarlett had as well, but it's not the man that Hollis knows, and although the narration hints that he's changed because of trauma, I'd also like to remind everybody that the two of them barely know one another. Even Scarlett said that Eaton was nice once you got to know him. Eaton kinda yells at her to get out, so she finally goes and he slams the door after her. In her room, Hollis builds up the fire, and then she sits close to it, playing with her wedding ring and crying. She knows that Eaton can hear her. Chapter 6. The next day is bread day, where the Northcott family all makes bread for the people who work for them. The idea is that even if they're too sick to work, then at least they'll have something to eat, which is a nice idea. However, I feel like it's one of those things that makes rich people feel like they're being useful, but the reality is that poor people need more than a single loaf of bread. Anyway, the entire family is down in the kitchen kneading dough. Hollis and Scarlett aren't really good at it, which is understandable considering that this is their first time. But while the cooks are being super nice to Scarlett, people are going out of their way to be rude and dismissive towards Hollis. Eventually, one of the cooks shoves Hollis out of the way with basically, "Move, I'll do it," rather than, to let her learn on her own. She goes to start trying to make more dough, but she's forgotten the steps. Oh, I can't wait for some sort of kitchen disaster to happen because of her incompetence. But much to my surprise, rather than to try and make herself useful, Hollis decides to actually read the room. She sets her things down and quietly slips away. She feels like Eaton was the only one who noticed her go. I do feel a little sorry for her because her parents and husband were murdered, and as she tries to make a new home for herself, she's being ignored and mistreated. Hollis cleans the flour from her arms upstairs and cries about the entire thing. She then thinks back towards how racist she'd been when she first met the Esau family, and then when she'd had to entertain Valentina. She understands now that nobody deserves to be treated like this. She tries to ask Silas what he would do to fix it. Obviously, no answers come, but Hollis knows deep down that he'd tell her not to hide away. So she goes back down to the kitchen where Giovanna greets her and wonders where she'd gone. Hollis says that she gets really sad sometimes and goes off to have a cry. Hollis then asks the cooks to show her again, and she says to making the bread. Eaton watches over her, judging but not saying anything. Later, they hand the bread out to the servants. The book calls them servants, but I think that they're more like the farm tenants who ran the land that belongs to the Northcotts. Again, I'm not sure that the author knows much about what she's writing about, but whatever. As usual, I'm putting more thought into this than the author clearly did. Anyway, Hollis is surprised at how much Giovanna seems to care about the tenants and their day-to-day problems. She knows all of them by name and asks about their children. Ian randomly mentions that today is his father's birthday, but there will be no celebration with everything that's been going on. Hollis doesn't exactly see the situation the same way and thinks that the dire circumstances warrant at least a cake or something. She asks about birthday traditions, and at first Ian doesn't answer until Hollis tells him that it wasn't like she and Silas had the opportunity to celebrate a birthday together. That seems to instill in him some good guilt, so he tells her that they have sweets to wish someone a year full of sweetness. So Hollis asks the cooks to help her make the local traditional birthday sweets. The cook asks if they have not had enough work, but Hollis says that it's important to celebrate somebody that she cares for, which softens the cook. Chapter 7. They decorate with some flowers and candles and surprise Reed. He insists that he didn't want them to make a fuss over him, but Giovanna says that it was all Hollis's idea. As they eat the cakes, Hollis says that in Koro, people would hold hands in a ring around the birthday person and dance around them in a circle. Eaton rudely remarks, "This is isolate. We don't do that here," which... Wow, I know that you don't like her, but geez, she was simply telling you an interesting cultural fact. She wasn't demanding that you should do the same to your father. Then adjust. If you're going to stay here, then you need to let go of Kuroa. I know that this is supposed to be the book of understanding that racism is wrong, but holy guacamole on a toast, Batman. Not everything is about you, Eaton. Also worth noting that Eaton is the only one upset over Hollis's random aside. His outburst made everybody else hella uncomfortable. However, Hollis has had enough of Eaton's stank attitude. She asked him that when the Eastoff family moved to Kuroa, did he expect for them to let go of every single piece of their culture to completely assimilate? He naturally says that's different, while somehow 100% missing the point. "You cannot possibly tell me that you're thankful another person has been dragged into this," he shouted. "Furthermore, half of our issues would be resolved if her kind would simply..." "My kind?" Oh, this is getting good. "Your people slaughtered ours without a second thought. The king that you refuse to deal with literally murdered people at a wedding reception. Tell me again how you're the injured party here." As you can imagine, Hollis is quick to throw in Eaton's face about how his own poor excuse for a king literally marched across political borders to murder his own citizens. Eaton is quick to throw back at her about how she was randomly Jameson's girlfriend, which you know you're losing the argument when you have to bring up ex-boyfriends. Hollis randomly runs up to her room, comes down, and throws piles of gold into Eaton's face. I don't know why, but okay. She explains that it's from her widow's fund that was paid out when Jameson heard of Silas's death. She tells him that it's his now since he's so eager to get into a war with Kuroa. The adults are completely and utterly mortified over the entire thing, yet as Reed demands that Eaton apologize to Hollis, I'm sitting here wondering why the three of them hadn't put a stop to it before it reached flinging sacks of gold in Eaton's face. As Hollis storms out from the room, she realizes that she made a huge mistake in coming here, which, yeah, she made one while she was sick with grief over the loss of almost everything, but I don't think that crawling back to Jameson was the right answer either. She pens a letter and leaves it on her bed. She then sneaks out when the house is quiet and she's positive that everybody else has gone to sleep. Downstairs, she runs into a servant, but tells the maid, "You didn't see me." From there, she goes to the stables where she gets her horse ready to go and leaves. Chapter 8. The second Hollis sets out, she regrets her decision. She didn't bring literally anything with her and wishes that she'd thought to at least pack a knife or something. She regrets having left Kuroa in the first place, but what's done is done. It doesn't take long for Eaton to catch up to her and force her back to the actual plot. He says that he saw her go, and Hollis kicks herself because his room faces the front yard and is right next to hers. Of course he heard and then saw her. Hollis says that it would be better if she returned to Kuroa. He reminds her of how dangerous the world can be. Well, not in so many words, but the thought was there, and asks what she would even do. She says that she'll figure it out. But Eaton tells her that this isn't her, which she naturally protests about. He tells her that she looks out for people and uses how she'd woven flowers into Giovanna's hair, and then goes on to say that he's been where Hollis was. So hurt by the pain of life that he walled himself up and shut everybody out. Hollis still protests, but Eaton says that he would have come and get her sooner or later, even if it meant following her across the border. As they turn around, he says that they simply won't speak to each other unless they have to, and promises to lay off on the racist remarks. Hollis promises to try to not provoke him. They get back to the manor right as the sun is coming up. They're in a hurry so that Hollis can slip into her room and pretend like she hadn't and tried to run away. As they go, they pass the tenants and Eaton calls most of them by name. Hollis expresses that she doesn't know any of the tenants on her own land. And I'd like to add that although we never saw Hollis in her life at the brightest state, it didn't exactly seem like she spent a lot of time there. So why would she know the names of people she'd probably only seen once or twice in her life? Also worth noting that Hollis is only 16 years old, and they'd been living with Jameson for a while too. So she would have been young the last time that she was at her family estate. The entire thing is ridiculous the longer I think about it. Am I again putting more thought into this than the author did? Obviously. Inside, Hollis apologizes to the maid that she'd asked to keep the secret about Hollis's midnight departure. Eaton pointedly tells the kitchen staff that Hollis is a member of the family, and when she asks for something, be it a fire or her cup filled, it had better be done. The cook says that they started to come around to Hollis when she insisted on celebrating Reed's birthday. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. And if you've already read all of my main Snarks, then you can find even more Snark on my Patreon. You can access it for $1 a month. Members also get early access to my main Tumblr Snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, you either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snarks so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just 1 cent per word. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of erotic short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash sales on my stories, and if you aren't following me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!